Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Deep Dive. You know, the show where we really dig deep into all those articles and research papers that you've been meaning to read, right? And today, we're going to be diving into the world of surrogacy
Okay.
in Mexico, specifically for male couples. We're using this great article from
All
OVU.com
right.
called Cost of Gay Surrogacy in Mexico.
Yeah.
And, you know, Mexico has really become kind of a hot spot for
Yeah.
surrogacy, and we're going to kind of unpack why that is.
Well, one of the big things is that Mexico's legal framework for surrogacy is really inclusive.
Okay.
Unlike a lot of other countries, it's open to all couples, regardless of sexual orientation
Yeah.
or marital status. So,
That's huge.
yeah.
For a lot of couples, I mean, that's a really big deal. So the article we're looking at talks about two types of surrogacy that are legal in Mexico,
Yeah.
altruistic and commercial.
Right.
And traditional surrogacy, where the surrogate uses her own egg, is not allowed.
Yeah, that's a key distinction. So in altruistic surrogacy, the surrogate doesn't receive any financial compensation. It's really just about helping someone create a family. But commercial surrogacy in Mexico is actually much more common.
Okay.
And that's where the surrogate is compensated for her time and effort in addition to her expenses.
The article also mentioned, a pretty landmark Supreme Court ruling back in 2021
Yes.
that kind of solidified surrogacy as a protected medical procedure.
Mhm.
What are the practical implications of that for intended parents?
That ruling was really huge because it declared surrogacy as a fundamental right. It really provided legal recognition and protection
Oh, wow.
for the intended parents. And some states in Mexico now allow the intended parents to be listed directly on their baby's birth certificate.
Interesting.
But, it's not universal across all states. It's a bit of a patchwork. So
Okay.
it's definitely something you'd want to clarify based on the specific state
Yeah.
you're considering.
And speaking of complexities, I think something that's probably on everyone's mind is cost, right?
Of course.
And this OVU article mentions a pretty wide range, around $49,000 to $90,000 for surrogacy in Mexico.
Right.
And so I guess my question is, what contributes to that big difference?
Yeah, well, think of it this way. Like buying a car. You can get a basic model or you can get one with all the bells and whistles, right?
Yeah.
Surrogacy programs work in a similar way. There are basic programs and there are premium programs.
Okay.
And the price tag reflects the level of service and coverage that they offer.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
So then what kind of things are included in, like, a basic versus a premium package? What should people be looking out for?
Well, a basic program will cover the essentials, so things like legal fees, surrogate compensation, and then medical expenses
Okay.
related to the pregnancy and the delivery. They might include one fresh embryo transfer and then maybe a frozen embryo transfer if that first one doesn't work out.
Okay.
But, there's often very limited coverage for other things.
So then what kind of things might not be included, that could lead to those hidden costs the article talks about?
So that's a really good question. It's things like multiple pregnancies, C-sections, or complications that require the baby to, stay in the NICU
Uh-huh.
might not be fully covered in that basic program. You also might end up paying extra for things like rematching with a new surrogate or a new egg donor,
Yeah.
maybe even storage fees for your sperm or embryos.
Well, so it sounds like while those basic programs might seem more affordable up front,
Right.
they can end up costing a lot more if you hit some bumps in the road.
Right.
So then what about premium programs? What makes those worth that extra cost?
Premium programs really aim to minimize those financial surprises,
Yeah.
give you a bit more peace of mind.
Yeah.
They usually offer unlimited trials for embryo transfers, which can be a big plus,
Okay.
especially if you have, fertility challenges. And they often include guaranteed coverage for things like multiple pregnancies, C-sections, and even NICU stays.
Mm-hmm.
And they typically, cover more of those incidentals, like travel expenses or lost wages for the surrogate.
That's like that comprehensive insurance policy. You're paying more upfront,
Exactly.
but, you're protected if things don't go exactly according to plan.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to something as important as building a family,
Right.
that peace of mind can be really priceless,
Absolutely.
But it's also about ethical considerations.
Right. And the article touches on the fact that surrogacy raises all kinds of ethical questions, especially when it comes to compensating surrogate mothers.
Sure.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, one of the big questions that comes up is whether commercial surrogacy, exploits women, especially those who are, facing financial hardship.
Yeah.
And it's crucial to think about the potential for coercion there.
Right.
But Mexico does have laws in place to protect the surrogates.
So what kind of legal protections are there for surrogate mothers in Mexico?
Well, for one thing, surrogates in Mexico can't use their own eggs.
This reduces the potential for exploitation or those, emotional complications.
Yeah.
And then all surrogacy contracts actually have to be reviewed and approved by a court
Okay.
to make sure that they're fair to both the intended parents and the surrogate.
That's reassuring to hear. It sounds like, there are safeguards in place
Hmm.
to help ensure that the surrogate's well-being and autonomy are respected.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about finding that ethical balance.
Mhm.
And, when we talk about these basic and premium programs, it's important to understand that the cost variations aren't just about the level of medical care or legal support. They also reflect the level of personalization and hand-holding
Okay.
you receive.
What do you mean by that? What kind of personalized services are we talking about?
Well, some programs offer more comprehensive psychological support, both for the intended parents and the surrogate.
Mm.
They might have dedicated case managers
Okay.
who are there to answer your questions and guide you through the process and really advocate for your needs. It sounds like having a personal concierge for your surrogacy journey.
Exactly. And for some intended parents, that level of personalized attention is worth the extra cost. It can make a potentially stressful and emotionally complex process feel more manageable.
So it's not just about ticking boxes and getting the legal paperwork done. It's about feeling supported and cared for every step of the way.
Precisely. And that's something you can get a sense of during those initial consultations with different clinics.
Right.
Pay attention to how responsive they are, how well they answer your questions, and whether they seem genuinely invested in your journey.
Speaking of those consultations, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the practical steps involved in choosing a surrogacy program in Mexico. What should our listener be looking for when they're researching different clinics and agencies?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say look for transparency.
Okay.
You want a clinic that's upfront about their costs, their success rates, and their screening process for both surrogate mothers and egg donors.
So no hidden fees or surprises lurking in the fine print.
Exactly. You should feel comfortable asking tough questions about their financial policies, their medical protocols, and even their ethical guidelines. A reputable clinic will welcome those questions and provide you with clear, concise answers.
The OVU article specifically mentioned the importance of finding a clinic with experience working with male couples. Why is that so crucial?
Because it's about feeling understood and supported.
Okay.
You want a clinic that's sensitive to the unique needs and challenges faced by LGBTQ plus intended parents. They should be familiar with the legal nuances of same-sex surrogacy in Mexico and have a proven track record of helping male couples achieve their dreams of parenthood.
So it's not just about finding a clinic that's technically competent. It's about finding one that aligns with your values and makes you feel seen and respected.
Absolutely. It's a very personal journey, and you want to feel like you're in good hands with people who understand your perspective and are genuinely invested in your success.
Now, I know that for a lot of couples, the emotional aspect of surrogacy can be just as daunting as the logistical or financial aspects. What advice would you give to our listener who might be feeling overwhelmed by those emotional complexities?
I think it's important to acknowledge those feelings and not try to brush them aside.
Yeah.
Surrogacy can bring up a roller coaster of emotions: excitement, anxiety, fear, hope, and everything in between.
Right.
It's a journey of highs and lows, and it's okay to feel all of it.
So it's not about pretending to be strong or stoic. It's about allowing yourself to be vulnerable and embrace the full spectrum of emotions.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone in feeling this way. There are countless other intended parents who have gone through this journey and understand the emotional ups and downs.
And that's where those support groups and online forums can be so valuable for one.
Absolutely.
They provide a space to connect with others who are walking a similar path.
It's a chance to share your experiences, your fears, your hopes, and your triumphs with people who get it. And don't be afraid to seek professional support as well. A therapist specializing in infertility and surrogacy can provide valuable guidance and coping mechanisms.
Speaking of guidance, let's circle back to the legal aspects of surrogacy in Mexico. What are some of the key things our listeners should be aware of when it comes to the legal framework?
Well, as we touched on earlier, surrogacy is legally recognized and protected in Mexico. But as with any legal process, there's paperwork involved. The most important document is the surrogacy contract, which outlines the rights and responsibilities of all parties involved.
So what kind of things are typically covered in that contract? What should our listener be looking for?
The contract will specify things like the financial arrangements, the medical protocols, the decision-making process, and the parental rights of the intended parents. It should also address potential complications like multiple births, health issues with the baby, or even a change of heart by one of the parties.
It sounds like it covers every possible scenario, kind of like a prenuptial agreement.
It's a good surrogacy journey.
What do you think about it? It's about protecting everyone involved
Yeah.
and ensuring that everyone is on the same page from the outset.
And when it comes to those parental rights, how does Mexico handle the legal recognition of intended parents, especially in the case of male couples?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, some Mexican states now allow intended parents to be listed directly on their baby's birth certificate, which simplifies the process of establishing legal parentage. However, this isn't the case in every state. In some states, you might need to go through an adoption process after the baby is born to secure your legal rights.
So it's crucial to understand the specific laws and regulations in the state where you're planning to pursue surrogacy.
Absolutely. And that's where having a skilled legal team on your side is essential. They can guide you through the process, ensure that all the necessary paperwork is in order, and advocate for your rights as intended parents.
Now, I imagine that navigating the legal complexities of international surrogacy can feel overwhelming, especially when you're dealing with a different country's laws and regulations. It can be a lot to wrap your head around,
Yeah.
but that's another reason why choosing a reputable and experienced clinic is so important. They should have a team of legal experts who are well-versed in the intricacies of Mexican surrogacy law and can help you navigate the process smoothly.
So it's not just about finding a clinic with good doctors and a cozy atmosphere. It's about finding one with a strong legal backbone that can guide you through the complexities of the system.
Exactly. They should be your partners in this journey, providing you with the legal support, the medical expertise, and the emotional guidance you need to make your dream of parenthood a reality.
Speaking of dreams becoming reality, let's talk about the timeline involved in surrogacy in Mexico. The OVU article mentions that the entire process typically takes around 11 to 12 months. Can you walk us through the different stages and what our listener can expect along the way?
You're right, it can feel like a long road, but once you break it down into stages, it feels much more manageable. That 11 to 12-month timeline usually includes finding and matching with the surrogate, completing the legal paperwork, going through the medical procedures like egg retrieval and embryo transfer, the pregnancy itself, and then finally bringing your baby home.
Okay, so let's say our listener has chosen a clinic and is ready to start. What's the first hurdle they have to clear?
Usually the matching process is the first step. The clinic will give you profiles of possible surrogates who meet what you're looking for, and you can look over their medical histories and get to know them through interviews, and then you pick someone you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a pretty emotional process. It's not just about finding someone physically healthy, it's finding someone you trust and connect with.
Exactly. You want to make sure you're choosing someone who shares your values and wants to make this a positive experience for everyone.
The OVU article mentions matching with a surrogate usually takes 1 to 2 months. What happens after that?
Once you've found your match, the legal team steps in to finalize the surrogacy contract. That's when you work out all those details like financial arrangements, medical protocols, and parental rights.
So it's all about getting everything in order before moving to the medical procedures.
Yeah, you want to make sure everything is clear and legal before you move forward.
And speaking of medical procedures, what does that part of the journey look like?
Well, if you're using donor eggs, that retrieval process happens first. Then the clinic creates embryos with your sperm in those eggs and transfers those embryos to the surrogate. It can take a few weeks from creation to transfer.
And then the pregnancy. What kind of support can someone expect from the clinic during those 9 months?
Good clinics will do regular checkups and monitoring throughout the pregnancy to make sure both the surrogate and baby are healthy. And they'll help with communication between you and the surrogate so you can stay updated and build that bond.
I imagine those 9 months can feel pretty overwhelming for first-time parents. It's a waiting game.
It is, and that's where having support is so important. Lean on your partner, your friends and family, and the clinic support staff. They're all there to help.
And then finally, the baby is born. What happens next?
Well, congrats are in order. After the birth, the clinic will help you with the legal paperwork, getting the birth certificate and passport. They'll also help you bring your baby home, which might have some extra legal steps depending on where you live.
So even after the baby is born, the clinic is still there to help you.
Exactly. They're there from start to finish. They help with the medical stuff, legal complexities, and the emotional ups and downs.
Wow, it's amazing how much we've covered today. We talked about the laws around surrogacy in Mexico, the different types of programs, the costs, the ethical parts, and even the process of bringing your baby home. It's been a really interesting deep dive.
It really has, and I hope it's helped our listeners feel more confident about taking the next step in their journey to becoming parents.
Me too. So to our listeners out there, as you continue to learn about surrogacy in Mexico, do your research, ask the hard questions, and choose a clinic that really feels like a partner. And most importantly, remember the joy that's waiting for you at the end.
Perfectly said. It's been great talking with you today.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Keep learning and exploring the world, and we'll see you next time.